Today we're going to use Plaster of Paris to create some casts in these silicone moulds. Plaster of Paris is a traditional material for making casts in moulds. This 1 kilogram bag I bought from Hobbycraft for £3.50, so it's relatively inexpensive. There's a lot of it in there and it goes a long way. One thing I have noticed, however, is on the instructions it says to place the dry powder into a clean container, making a well in the centre and pour the water in slowly and mix, which is completely the opposite of the advice I've heard. Always add powder to water, not the other way around. So I'm going to do it my way. To make the plaster of Paris a little bit stronger, I'm going to add some PVA glue to the water. Hopefully there'll be less chance of it cracking when it comes out of the mould. First of all, I'm going to transfer the plaster of Paris from the bag into an airtight container to protect it from moisture when it's stored. For this mix, I'm adding a tablespoonful of water, and about half a tablespoonful of PVA glue. And I'll give that a stir until it's thoroughly mixed together. To the water, I'm going to sprinkle on 2 tablespoons of the plaster of Paris powder. I'm going to let that sit for about a minute to allow the mixture to slake, which means to allow the powder to absorb some of the water. While we're waiting for the plaster to slake, I'm going to prepare the moulds by dusting them with talcum powder. I'm using a glitter blower with talc to dust the moulds. The talcum powder acts as a release agent for the mould, and it should also give quite a smooth finish to the casting. The plaster is not soaking in any further, so I'm going to stir it now for about a minute. I'm stirring relatively gently, trying not to introduce any air bubbles. It's important to use cold water with plaster of Paris. Cold water ensures a stronger result, and it slows down the curing time. Hot water would result in a weaker cast, which is more likely to break, and it also speeds up the curing time, giving you less time to get the plaster into the mould. I'm going to fill a couple of these deeper moulds using a palette knife. I'm just using a toothpick to work some of the plaster into the details of the mould. Once the mould is full, I'm dropping it onto the table to encourage any air bubbles to come to the surface and to make sure the plaster goes into all the nooks and crannies. The plaster should take about an hour to cure. I can feel the plaster starting to go off a little now, as it's feeling much thicker. Because the plaster is starting to cure, there's not many air bubbles coming to the surface, which may mean that there may be some bubbles in the castings. So I'm going to leave it an hour or so to set and then come back and demould them. The plaster of Paris with PVA is now set and it's time to unmould it. The first thing that I notice is that it's quite a rough, chalky texture compared to the resin plaster. I'm just carefully unmoulding it. It seems to have worked okay on these shallow moulds. And as suspected, there are some air bubbles with this mould, as this was cast when the plaster was starting to go off. It does feel quite brittle. The plaster has picked up the details of the mould quite well. While plaster of Paris is safe to demould after an hour or so, it's advisable to allow it to fully dry for a day or two before using the castings in your projects. These are the deep moulds, and I have a feeling we may get some breakages. I'm going to gently tease these out. Surprisingly, the first ones come out very well with just a tiny bit of clean-up to do. That one is broken, but it can be glued together with a little bit of PVA. This is another one with quite intricate details that may be awkward to get out. It's come out quite well, and it hasn't broken, so I'm quite pleased with that. Plaster of Paris doesn't feel quite as robust as the resin plaster, but it's much less expensive at about a third of the price. I'm sure I'll be making more of these to use in my mixed media projects. All that is left to do is to clean the moulds in warm soapy water and allow them to thoroughly air dry before their next use. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit the like button. Please check out my other casting videos and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thank you for watching.